Scientists and researchers on Reddit, how do you deal with family members, loved ones who tend to have strong opinions on scientific methodology and topics that they do not understand, often basing their opinions on the internet, rather than listening to someone who has had several years of training? This kind of thing is a really hot topic in the scientific communication and engagement arena at the moment, for fairly obvious reasons. It seems that the current advice is not to tell people that they're wrong, or even offer your own evidence that proves they're wrong. It just turns people off and hardens their standpoint. Instead, discuss with them the reasons for why they believe something. Why is their source reliable? Can they really explain to you the details in a way that makes real sense? What reasons might a source be biased one way or another, especially online where clicks can equal income? Often people with alternative anti-mainstream conspiracy views know somewhere deep down inside themselves that they could be wrong. But they need to come to the reality of things by themselves, and making them feel stupid doesn't help that. Not always easy though. Personally, just like every other situation where I get into a conversation with someone who is unwilling to actually argue intellectually, I attempt to make my point. At the point where I realize they do not understand how to properly reason for themselves, I politely agree to disagree until I can walk away. I fix tea for a living and love when someone tells me that I am doing something wrong. That is an easy fix. I just pass them the tools and say, show me. It's how I learn. If you can show me a better way, then I will do it that way forever. If you can't show me, then you can walk away. I have a bit of a scientific background, so I understand enough to know that I don't know shit. If someone reads a TLDR, but admits there's so many details that can't be boiled down into 3 sentences, that's one thing. If someone thinks they understand the details better than those that have spent a lifetime researching the subject, it's doubtful you're ever going to get through to them. Always keep an open mind. Even with subjects you're pretty sure you understand well, there's always something new to learn. My brother would argue with me on things I was doing a degree in, or was working in, because he once watched a documentary on it. He still does it. Most of the time he just tries to shut down debate by saying, I know more than you. I have spent the past 10 years in this shit and you're gonna tell me you know more from your 40-minute documentary. Sadly, some people will always be like that. No manner of argument will convince them otherwise. Astronomer here. My father is also very educated, PhD in engineering, but is a serious climate change denier. He insists things are getting warmer, but it's a natural process. I'm not going to lie. After many discussions with him in person, via email, sharing literature etc., and also from my sister, also a scientist, we just don't discuss it anymore with him. We once asked him flat out what would change his mind that climate change is real, and he said nothing would. In which case it's a belief, not anything scientific. And there is very little you can do by that point. On a more entertaining note, I do have a distant relative who genuinely thinks aliens talk to us regularly, and I'm just part of the government cover-up because I won't tell him he's right. That dude also thinks the moon landing and Holocaust are faked, and sent money to Nigerian scams before the internet existed. So yeah, luckily I haven't seen him in a few years, else it'd be super awkward. I'm a scientist working in the field of genetics. I can't begin to explain how frustrating it is to have family members from a deeply religious background who believe that tomatoes can give you cancer, or that a soft drink can spread AIDS. Where I'm from, misinformation is spread by WhatsApp and Facebook, platforms that literally everyone over 45 is absolutely obsessed with. There's no dealing with it. A couple of family meetings to explain why proper research is to be done before one blindly believes all that one reads. The current scientific community is riddled with subpar publications with no proper research methodology, which is a whole different discussion in and of itself. But that's besides the point. Misinformation is cancer, and it's growing with a vengeance in a time such as this. Scientist here with over 50 first author articles. I'll be short and frank. I cut them out of my life. With today's advancement in information, if someone is that stupid to believe in conspiracy theories, They shouldn't be worthy of my time. I don't attend their events and I instead use that time to plan more productive projects. I've tried to convince people in the past. It's often just a waste of time. If you ever want to convince someone, convince a child. Because he will listen, he will think, he will realize that he might be wrong. Adults won't. I am a grad student, working to get my PhD in immunology. I've been working in infectious diseases for like 6-7 years. My current lab deals with COVID-related research. My parents refused to believe anything I said about the virus at the beginning of the pandemic. They believed the sunlight could destroy it and that drinking garlic can save them. They also believed that because they live in the tropics it was too hot for the virus so they also believed having darker skin protected them. All of this because of what they saw on Facebook. No matter how much I tried to explain or sent online resources, they refused to believe anything except what they came across on Facebook. They are both boomers and do not understand that not everything on the internet is true. I have to give credits to my mother though. She at least listened to me. My father on the other hand was out of control. He wasn't just riling himself up, he was riling others up as well. After some time I gave up, but as the situation unfolded they came to realize that I was right and they were wrong. Thankfully now they listen to me, but of course with occasional arguing. But for the most part they listen. I graduated 2 colleges in canine behavior. Canine learning theory. Canine stuff pretty much. Went to Animal Behavior College. Studied under David of Canine Blue Ribbon, Las Vegas behaviorist. Wonderful guy. Had a spot on Animal Planet way back when for owning Apollo, the $10,000 dog. I am in a loving relationship with my partner who respects my knowledge in the canine field and challenges me unless I prove it. It's very healthy since I don't actively study anymore. There's a few times she was right. Her f***ing mother though legit argued with me that dogs have an LSX for fun. She then tried to argue with me on how dogs' behavior can be modified. And that since a recent switch of mine, dog I adopted and am rehabilitating into a service animal, bit me. He must have a bloodlust now. I can forgive the mother. This is how I deal with her. If you can prove me wrong on both of your accounts, I'll buy you a house. If she could prove me wrong, that means everything we know about dogs are questionable. And I could make a fuckload of money selling that research paper. One thing that bothers me is when those who should know better don't believe what science has made clear. For example, my grandfather is very intelligent. He's an engineer, yet he doesn't believe in climate change and he believes that aliens have visited Earth. I'm not saying aliens don't exist because it's possible they do, but I don't think they visited Earth. I'm not even a scientist, but I do know this feeling quite well. It's very annoying. Mom and dad or best friend Jimmy read something online and suddenly know it all. The source isn't at all credible either. Meanwhile, I can sit here and throw back peer-reviewed research paper, journal etc one after the other and it's all just refuted with that single unreliable WikiHow article. Pro tip for any profession. WikiHow does not come close to the credibility of peer-reviewed research by industry-leading professionals. Not necessarily methodology, but this coverage has opened my eyes to just how little people know about biology, virology, really anything to do with disease. Nobody could have predicted this is the clearest indicator that I am about to engage with an imbecile. I'm with you. Nobody could have predicted this. The US literally had a pandemic plan written several years ago and did a pandemic drill when the new 2016 administration transition was occurring. I just can't with these people. I literally studied and did drills on this several years ago. Come on people. And I see healthcare worker wearing masks wrong. Seriously? When I finally get my BS in geology, I plan to make a copy of it to keep on me so I can literally slap people with my degree and tell them to shut the FCK up unless they also have a degree. I worked with a guy that literally said if you don't have at least a master's degree, you're not worth me talking to. This was the same guy that plugged a laser printer in our Exchange server's UPS several times, crashing the server and needing a full rebuild each time. The guy was a moron. Have a graduate degree and a decade of experience in statistics and data science. As a result, I understand 1. The prolific abuse of statistics to support arguments. 2. The incredibly small probability that I will change someone's mind. So my strategy is to change the subject to something I'd rather talk about. Like my dog or the weather. Geophysics PhD student here. My family consists of several young Earth creationists, hardcore conspiracy theorists and a few unironic flat earthers. I've tried having serious conversation with them where I take everything they say seriously and try to show them where they go wrong instead of dismissing any of their nonsense. But, ironically, they were the ones who have gotten the most frustrated and have given up talking to me because I'm too close-minded. Treating every one of their claims seriously is tedious, but it's one of the only ways to even have a conversation. But even then, it doesn't always work. I guess the lesson is that there are some who are simply unwilling to hear viewpoints other than their own, and nothing you can do will really change that. One strategy that has worked with a few family members is to try and appeal to whatever their profession skill is. E.g. You're a mechanic and know way more than me about cars. So it wouldn't feel good if I watched a YouTube video and decided that you literally had no idea what you were talking about. Right? It would take a lot on my part to outweigh your experience and knowledge. This is why I almost always listen to you when it comes to cars. Reductio ad absurdum, one of their stated claims or an assumption. Show they can't possibly be correct due to some internal contradiction. Inconsistencies can be like a slap in the face. Asking questions requiring them to explain their claim, rather than trying to teach them your position, will only lead to their ignorance's exposure. People who don't think they are ignorant are often not amenable to being persuaded or educated. When they fail to explain their position understandably, even to themselves, they'll be much more humble and might be ready for some correction. It is more likely that you'll just piss them off. But even that can bring some solace. Once they realize they can't be right, they might be open to someone who is. You've read about Thrasymachus? I'm an electrical engineer and my brother and I had a conversation in which he argued the physics of electricity was my personal opinion. It's pretty commonplace to be so self-assured you can't even see the lies you tell yourself. I'm no researcher. Just a healthcare professional. I don't deal with it. My father is beyond any sort of conversation. If you disagree with him, you are wrong and should feel bad. I just left. No matter how hard it was for him, my mother or me. He had it coming. And I didn't deserve to be insulted for my career choice constantly. Ignore them. The way I see it, you can pick your family, and I have friends whose opinions I respect considerably higher than many blood relatives. I have a close family member with a master's degree from an exceptional university in engineering. As a result, he thinks he can spend 3 days on Google and be more of an expert on a subject than someone with a PhD. He's intelligent, but he's also an over-opinionated asshole. I've challenged him many times throughout the years and all he does is dig his heel in the ground no matter how sound my argument is. These days, I've accepted that his mind is firm and I largely ignore him. He's currently muted on Facebook and I haven't talked to him in months. Not reading his FB posts dropped my blood pressure by a few points. I just call citation needed whenever they start spouting crap. Either they come up with something which I pull up on my phone and then use to discredit them in the very same conversation, or they try to change the subject, at which point I bring them back to their original unsubstantiated claim. Do this enough times and they'll learn to hold their tongue around you. It's so infuriating. And I teach stats, but to them it's not the right kind of stats. Because either do they understand how science works. I couldn't possibly know how to read a paper with the same methodology I teach in an adjacent field like nutrition. I ask them if they know what a beta review is. Then ask would they like to know. When they say no, then I say why should I trust what they say? And it usually just breaks apart because ultimately they are trying to score points on me, not have a discussion. Haha. You don't need to be scientist to be tired of that one relative's voodoo science. Yeah, but it makes it worse if you have a degree physics and your mom thinks that nuclear power is the same thing universally and that fusion and fission are just different pronunciations. And don't forget that nuclear power is when atoms release all the energy that makes them small, and that's why they explode so big. I recently had to stop talking to my father. I researched epigenetics. I taught epidemiology and parasitology. He said, "I'm not going to live my life in fear to justify going out to 4 places in a single night to party." I told him I'll look forward to the funeral and hung up. This was after several minutes of trying to explain the dangers and getting shot down because I'm just living in fear. I love him. But he is a dumbass who only believes what's convenient and FCK anybody else. He's immunocompromised and was weak for months after the flu several years ago. I'll miss him. I am lucky enough that my family does not have strong wrong opinions on science, and if they do, they don't post it online at least. They sometimes ask for my opinion or ask some questions to better understand what they cannot comprehend. And that's it. With my partner it's a different story. Their elderly grandmother believes in anything and shares all of it in her Facebook. My partner just comments on the posts with the true facts and explanations. Their grandma usually doesn't even reply to those. I know my family members that do this. And I know that nothing will change their minds. So I just sink down to their level and try to get out all their talking points before they do so they can't use them. The argument tends to fizzle out quickly after that, so you can just get on with your life. Arguing about masks? Call them sheep for parroting things anti-mask people say. Arguing about abortion? Call them big government liberals for trying to restrict freedoms. They got offended you called them a liberal? Call them a snowflake and ask if they need a safe space. Is this productive? Nope. But who cares? If you're dealing with morons who cannot have a real discussion, why put all that effort into not being heard when you can at least have a little bit of fun? Note if the person you're arguing with has 2 brain cells to rub together. This won't work. My extended family is filled with dunces who didn't have to work for anything. So it's easy to get them riled up. Nobody likes to be called an anti-vaxxer or a flat earther. So I typically point out that them trusting their own feelings over the facts is akin to people who deny vaccine science or thousands-year-old geography. My field is physics, so I am always very quick to admit I am not an expert in other fields like epidemiology or psychology. And I defer to the experts in those fields because they've spent their whole lives studying those topics and I have not. I have a degree in the microbiology. But I don't have a job in the field because my interests and hubs work have carried me elsewhere. When my co-workers start in on their pet medical theories, I keep my mouth shut and absorb it all. Then I retell the stories for the amusement of my family. People who rely on belief and faith without proper scientific methodology or even a modicum of peer review deserve to be the laughingstock of dinnertime tales. Interjecting with rational thoughts isn't going to change their minds. So I may as well enjoy myself. Laugh at them in secret. But in person be sure to sanitize shared spaces like my life depends on it. Because it probably does. A couple of years ago, my non-geek friends were talking about blockchains and how they can change everything. Soon, I found they meant blockchains. And they didn't even know that it was just a storage model. I tried to say that it is a nice thing. But not that big since it was known from earlier. And Bitcoin used it and made it famous. I couldn't convince them that much. But nowadays, they know that I knew what I was talking about. And they didn't. It became a joke among us. Calling subjects blockchains when we're totally sure the other person is wrong. Capital D. I find myself doing a lot mental translation. That helps keep me from getting frustrated and angry. For example, when they say, I researched, what they really mean is, I googled. When they say, it is impossible, or everyone knows, what they really mean is, I think it's unlikely, or all the people on Facebook I follow think. A lot of what they say really just means, I'm scared. Double quote. When I translate it in my own head, then I can respond to what they are really saying. The best way to make these people realize that they're wrong is to lead them to the conclusion that they figured it out for themselves. Drop hints and clues along the path to get them to the intended destination. Just saying you're wrong is not going to sway the conceited or the brainwashed. It's kind of the same as cult deprogramming, but not entirely. I know it seems kind of stupid. And it doesn't make much sense to me why someone would hold these beliefs in the first place. But they got there emotionally rather than logically. So you can't use sheer logic.